Generalists lose every time. When you're a generalist, you compete on price. When you're a specialist, you dominate on value. And in today's environment, there is no middle ground. Hi, my name's Josh, and I spent 10 years as a director and shareholder of a 3 million engineering consultancy that we grew to 30 million across engineering, town planning, surveying, and architecture. And one of the biggest lessons I learned during this journey was, the market rewards specialists, not generalists. So in today's episode, we're going to dig into three things. One, why being a generalist traps you in low fee, low margin work, i.e. not good. Two, how positioning yourself as a specialist unlocks way better clients and much better profit margins. And three, we're going to discuss the practical moves consultancy owners are making right now to turn their niche, to own their niche and win on value, not price. So let's dive in. All right, team, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk to you about today is, and I'm really passionate about this. Like, I see so many business owners being generalists out there in the marketplace, trying to be all things to all people, working with mum and dad developers, private developers, local councils, state government, contractors, and they're just, they have this mentality that I need to be all things to all people in order to grow my business. And I want to turn that on its head. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, like, generalists really compete on price, and they typically always lose. So let's dive in and talk about that. So, like I said, like, competing in the market as a, generalist, or we can do that, like a do-it-all kind of firm, it turns you into a commodity. And I'm sure if you're nodding your head and you've experienced this, or you know that you're in the generalist space and you've experienced this, it's like, oh, Steve down the road can do it for $100 cheaper. If you can match his price, we'll give you the project. Or why is it so expensive? Like, I don't understand. Like, don't you just have to do a quick design and we just lodge that to council? Or, like, you just get all of these questions because you are seen as a commodity. You're not seen as a specialist. You're not seen as, like, you don't you don't get recognized for the 4 or 5 years of work you did at uni to become, like, quite a smart person, and, like, you take a lot of risk and all those sorts of things. So what we see in this, like, red ocean of generalists is that, like, you're competing on price. Clients don't respect you, and you're just this commodity. Like, it's just part of this process that's got to be done to get X, Y, and Z project off the ground. So generalists are always competing on price, and I really think that they lose most of the time. The second thing I want to talk to you about, like, clients in this space, typically, like, price is the only differentiator. Are you cheaper than the person down the road? They don't typically care about, your experience in that space, the 50, 100, 200 projects that you've done, prior to that. They don't typically care about your expertise, experience, or team capability. That's pretty much price. So when you're in the generalist space, being all things to all people, it is pretty much it. Like, you literally could submit a fee proposal that just says, one line, here is our price. Like, don't worry about all the other stuff around trying to position your business and position yourself and talk about your wins and stuff. So when you're choosing clients, and I use that word intentionally, choosing clients who are in the generalist space, they default to price over everything else. And I don't know about you, but I think you want to grow a business or run a business that has good profit margins, have clients that respect you, and you have clients giving you good fee paying work, not seeing you as a commodity and always haggling with you on price. But that's the thing, like, when I see and work with generalists, and we do a lot of work with boardroom members around, like, let's move out of this generalist space, let's pick a niche. We'll talk about niching in a second. Pick a niche, own it, start to charge more, all that sort of stuff. But what I see is, like, when you're in the generalist space, you typically attract low quality clients who just demand more value but less. There's something about it energetically, there's something about it how you position your business. But if you're like, oh, I can do everything, I'm all things to all people, I can help with decks, and I can help with your subdivision, I can do a high rise and a medium rise and all that sort of stuff, clients, like, you just seem to attract low value clients who are needy, don't respect you, and just value more. Sorry, they want more, but value you and your business less. And the final thing I'll say here about being a generalist is, like, it just kills your profit margins. Like, I've worked with some clients who've come to us and we've turned their business around, who are on like single digit profit margins because they're like, well, I've got to be cheap to compete with all the other one man bands or all the other people in and around this area who are doing the same thing as me. And I'm like, well, let's not compete anymore. Let's be different. Let's not be a generalist. Let's not play that game because that's the race to the bottom. That's the, that's the surest way to have no profit in your business and buy yourself a really stressful job. Let's change that. So generalist positioning in the marketplace kills profit margins and it creates constant pressure. Topic for another podcast episode, but the more profit you make in your business, the more it gives you choice and the more it relieves pressure. If you're a low margin business, single digit profit margins are in the teens, there is a constant pressure from you to be delivering projects, winning new work, delivering at a low margin because it's just a constant hamster wheel. Because if you're only making 6% or 8% or 12% or 15% on a project, you're not building up that war chest, that kitty, that buffer, so that when a project gets delayed or something happens, you've got no buffer there to deal with those unknowns in the business. So generalist positioning, like it kills margins, but also puts so much pressure on you as a business owner to keep running on that hamster wheel to keep things going. So that's the first idea, team, or the first thing I want to talk to you about. Generalists compete on price and they typically always lose. So let's start talking about how to not do that anymore. All right, team, let's keep going. The second thing I want to talk to you about now is we've talked about generalists. I mentioned the word niching before. Now I want to talk to you about why specialists or owning a niche dominate on value and why I'm so big on, and this is something I'm incredibly passionate about. Whenever clients come work with us in boardroom, the first thing I always say is like, what's your niche? What's your specialty? What's your, in our words, like your inch wide, mile deep element in the marketplace? And if they're like, we don't have one, that's one of the first things that we work on, shifting from generalist to specialist. So the second thing I want to talk to you about in today's episode is why specialists dominate on value. So let's talk about the inch wide, mile deep concept for a second. So you've, based on your field and where you are in the marketplace, I'm sure there's a bunch of different specialties that you could choose from or go into. And what I mean by that is like, civil engineers as an example could be, you can work on literally hundreds of different types of projects and work with, multiple different types of client bases. And the civil engineers that I've seen win are civil engineers who go, you know what, we love and we're really good at the industrial subdivision space. So instead of being resi subdivision, we're going to niche right into industrial subdivisions, and we're going to work with D&C contractors and the big commercial the big industrial developers of the world. That's a niche. Civil engineering on industrial subdivisions. Structural engineers could just be special. I'm going to specialize in high-end homes for high net worth individuals. So you see how it's very, very different to, I'm a structural engineer, I can do a deck through to a high rise. It's like, no, I'm a structural engineer that specializes in high-end resi homes. And you'd start to build relationships with high-end architects, high-end developers, and start to build your referral network. But the thing I love about specializing, and it's a mindset thing more than anything, team, like there's this concept, generalists feel like they're, what's the word? They spread themselves across everything to capture all of the market to therefore reduce risk in the business. But when they're all things to all people, there's no, like we've just talked about, there's no profit, there's no buffer in the business. And they just get dominated by other people in the marketplace, clients wanting to haggle on price. But when you're a specialist and you have a specific authority in your space, you can charge double, triple, quadruple what other generalist engineers or town planners or surveyors or architects are charging in that space. So the thing with your positioning and the inch wide, mile deep is if you choose inch wide, meaning small, so a structural engineer doing high-end homes in Brisbane as a very specific niche, you get to know all the players, everything there is to know about that market, who the developers are, who the competitors are, who the contractors are, and you become just a go-to authority in your niche. So when you specialize, you're seen as like a go-to person. It's like, well, when they think of high-end homes in Brisbane, they associate your company and your business. So specialists are seen as go-to authorities in their niche. Clients seek you out for expertise. They're not super concerned about price. Sometimes price comes into it, and yes, pricing is always like one of the top 3 to 5 factors that any client will use to choose you as their consultant. But you get sought out because of your expertise and your ability to deliver those projects really well. No rework, no issues on site, no construction problems, because you're saving clients money in the long run. So clients seek you out for your expertise. You know what that means? You can command higher fees. If you're an expert in your space, you get great results, you're known as the go-to, you can command higher fees, better margins, and you know what? More respect from your clients. Instead of them dictating terms, you're like, this is kind of how it rolls, team. This is how we do things. You just know exactly what needs to happen on that project and which stages because you've done it 50 or 100 times. So specializing means that you command higher fees, better margins, and more respect from your clients. The other thing I want to mention is it creates, being a specialist in your space creates like good client loyalty, good repeat work because they like working with you. They typically have more projects. So there's always like that repeat work piece that comes through. The final thing I want to say before we move on is like authority, specializing and having authority in your space, it builds momentum. So like you might think that specializing and choosing a niche is you're cutting off all these referral sources and you're cutting off all these opportunities for your business. But I'd rather you work on 1 or 2 or 3 projects in a specialty niche making 30 to 40% net margin than fighting for everything with Joe Blogs and Steve Biggs, just made that name up. Hopefully there's no Steve Biggs listening to this podcast, down the road on a 5 or 8% margin. I'd much rather you make more margin on less projects, which gives you choice. And then what happens is you start to build, authority and a reputation in that space, you know, referrals just start to flow. They start to come and your marketing doesn't need to do anything special because your work and your authority speaks so highly or speaks so well of the results and the skills that you have. So that's the second idea, team. Specialists dominate on value and get paid more and make more margin. Okay, team, the last piece of the puzzle, the last thing I want to talk to you about is like, this is great. We've talked about how being a generalist is not good. We've then talked about how we want to specialize and become a specialist in your space and niche. And now I want to talk about like the how, like how do you actually position your consultancy as a specialist in your space? The first things first is like choose a niche. And so we've got a awesome diagram that we use with our boardroom clients, which is like the intersection of work that I love doing. Work that I'm really good at, like you've got good skills and experience at, work that you love doing so that, you know, it lights you up and you really enjoy it. And the third thing is clients in that space who have the money to pay you what you're worth. So work that you're good at, work that you love doing, and clients in that space that have the money to pay you what you're worth. The intersection of that is your niche. So spend a bit of time identifying and doubling down on the niche where you have that unique experience. And if you want to run that little diagram, you totally can. If you want that diagram, just shoot me an email and we can hook you up. The second thing is the most powerful form of marketing is case studies. So it's great that you can talk about how good you are. It's great that you can talk about your skills and experience and the results you've got for clients on projects. But if you can start to do work in that niche, build case studies, testimonials, social proof, all those sorts of things, start to do a bit of thought leadership stuff in that space. When you have your existing clients selling for you and positioning your business for you, that stuff is gold. So 1, identify your niche and double down on that and start to build expertise in that space. 2, start to build case studies and like social proof and proof of clients getting results with you. 3, and this is going to be super hard, you want to start to turn off low value generalist work. So if you're in the process, and we've done this with plenty of our boardroom clients, is it's got to be a transition. You can't just go, all right, I've been a generalist, I'm going to be a specialist now. This is my niche. All of you generalist clients can go away. I'm going to focus on my specialty. Real world says no, that doesn't work like that. So you've got to, over time, firstly, identify your niche, where you want to go. You want to start to put some feelers out, start to do some proposals, start to win some work in that space whilst keeping the generalist work, because you got to keep the doors open. You got to keep money coming into the business. And over time, as you're building relationships and reputation, you're starting to get a good, confident pipeline of specialty work. You want to start to turn off that low value generalist work because it's just going to be a distraction. Like if you're doing good specialty work at 30% margins and you've still got a few low value generalist work clients on 8 to 10% margin. I know which one I'd choose. But you want to slowly say no to that low value generalist stuff and turn that off over time. You also want to start to align your team, your systems and marketing around that specialist positioning. So you want to really start to think about new hires, people that could start to come into your business to really further emulate your chosen niche, people who have good experience, reputation, that sort of thing. You want to start to build systems around that. You want to start to build your marketing around that so that over a period of 6 to 9 to 12 months, you transform your image in the marketplace from generalist to specialist. And then the final thing is like all the clients that you're talking to and starting to work with in the specialist space, you want to just use those conversations and those projects to just reinforce your expertise and your authority. So every time you're talking to a client, you're working on one of those projects, I just want you to take the wins, take the learnings, take the experience, talk about it in your socials, talk about it in your marketing, and really use those experiences to further reinforce your expertise and authority in your particular niche. All right, I think that's enough ideas in terms of how to position your consultancy as a specialist. All right, what I'm going to do now is quickly share a client story that really illustrates this process of going from generalist to specialist. So one of our amazing boardroom members, Raj, he made the decision to reposition his consultancy around a clear specialist niche. So instead of chasing every project that came across his desk, he narrowed his focus and became known as the expert in his field. And the result for Raj, his business just didn't grow in revenue, his profit margins soared. In fact, he's just reported margins north of 40% net, while more than doubling the size of his business. But for Raj, the real win wasn't just in the numbers in his business, it was in the shift in terms of who they attracted as clients. They stopped dealing with low fee, high hassle, tire kicking kind of clients and started to work exclusively with high value clients who really respected their expertise. So for Raj, how did he get there? He made 3 big moves. We stopped saying yes to work that didn't align with his positioning. Second, he built authority by putting his results and expertise out there in the market. And thirdly, he invested in his team in the business so they could deliver specialty outcomes at very high standards. And the shift for Raj has proved the point. Generalists get squeezed with margins, specialist wins. And for us, we help Raj every step of the way. Could not be prouder of him and what his business has achieved. And for him and the team, it's the market rewards specialty because he's grown his business, almost doubled it. And hitting 40% margins and living an amazing life too. All right, team, let's wrap things up there. So in summary, generalists lose because they compete on price, specialists win because they own their value, and the consultancy owners who commit to a niche and their specialty, they create more profit, they work with better clients, and they build a business that they're proud of. So team, if you'd like to learn more about how to run a more efficient and profitable consultancy, increase revenue, and build a business that gives you back both profit and freedom, check out our 10 million consultancy roadmap training. So it's a step-by-step guide that shows you how to move from where you are now to your next revenue level, whether it's 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, or 10 million plus. So you'll find a link to that training right below this episode, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode. Take care and talk soon.